Welcome to this episode of the Upfront Podcast. As always, I am your host, Nina Mueller, and this is the place where you get your dose of upfront and honest conversations with people from all around the world. Enjoy the show. My guest today is Matan Peretz, who makes a living as a comedian in Israel. And as an Israeli citizen, he also serves in the IDF, the Israel Defense Forces, when called up for reserve duty. Matan has been using his platform to advocate for Israel and against terrorism, and will be sharing some important points of his activism and the social media information war. Based on his own experience, Matan will tell us about what life is like in Judea and Samaria, or otherwise referred to as settlements in the West Bank, and how they have had to experience similar violence to what Hamas perpetrated on October 7th, 2023, long before any anti-Semites on social media caught wind of it, and are now calling for the eradication of the entire Jewish people. Matan graciously took time out of his busy schedule between serving in defense of our country and performing comedy to talk about various points in this war between Israel and Hamas. We are touching on the United Nations' countless anti-Semitic resolutions, history revisionism running rampant online on social media platforms, and how Israel is held to a different standard than any other sovereign nation has ever been that has come under attack by terrorists. Matan and I are also discussing gun ownership in Israel in comparison to the United States, and why there are no school shootings in Israel. We are also talking about how far indoctrination of hate and brainwashing can go, or whether evil could be a basic human trait that just needs to be activated, whether there is a difference between the motivation of the Nazis and the Islamic terrorists of Hamas, and what the aftermath of this war could look like. Hi, Matan. Glad you're here today.
Thank you so much.
Yeah, of course. My pleasure. So please tell me a bit about yourself to start off with.
Okay, my name is Matan Peretz. I'm 35 years old, stand-up comedian from Israel. I live in Hulon, which is next to Tel Aviv, center of Israel. I'm an active IDF reserve service, and that's pretty much it.
So it is quite known that work in comedy is a tough business, right? How did you come to the decision to pursue a career in comedy?
Actually, I think I've always been drawn to comedy ever since I was very little. Like I always loved like comedy bits, and I was always like the funny kid in class, and I was really like I didn't really pursue it because I was afraid. I didn't thought could be anything to it. And when I was 29 years old actually. I went to like an open stage, like as a crowd. I went to an open stage, like a comedy open stage, and I just wanted like I went from the crowd, like I asked to go on, and they asked me like, "Are you a stand-up comedian?" I was like, "No," and they were like, "Okay, so what are you doing?" I was like, "I don't know. I feel like I need to try at least like to tell myself that I tried."
Mm-hmm.
And I went on, and it was awesome. And ever since then, March 2018, I'm a stand-up comedian.
That's amazing. So how would you best describe your humor?
Very sarcastic, very cynical. I don't like to do any like really like low like jokes. Like I don't know, I don't do any sex jokes at all.
Mm.
Probably because of my religious background. Like it feels very awkward to me. Still. So I'm doing a lot of like I love dark humor. I'm talking about relationships and drugs and politics and whatever. Like I'm talking basically about everything but sex.
All right, gotcha. When you mentioned sarcasm, does that land with the Israeli crowd?
Absolutely.
Oh, it does? Because I felt like in everyday life, they didn't really pick up on the sarcasm usually in like everyday discussions, conversations.
Of course they do. Maybe not the American version of sarcasm, but yeah,
All
it
right.
does. You have to be very sarcastic and cynical to survive the life here in Israel. If you're not doing very well.
Yeah, very true. So, as a comedian, first and foremost, how did you come to the decision to start using your platform on social media to, advocate for Israel and speak up against misinformation about the war Israel is forced to fight?
I've been always like I've done it like way before this war. Just like the operations that we did usually didn't last more than like 3 weeks. So I've been end up doing like maybe 2 or 3 videos in English. And this war, like I was in Mexico when it started, and I thought about like until I get home, until I get back to Israel, I have to do something. And I'm already on the Mexican VPN. So maybe my videos will really go viral, like outside of Israel if I speak English. And it was the right decision because that really, like, truly what happened. And then when I got to Israel, I was like, people was messaging me, like, please don't stop, like, keep going. Like, we get our information from you like, so please, it's very important to us. And I was like, you know what? I'll keep doing it. And I did. And, you know, it's here we are now.
Mm. Obviously, October 7th has set a new uh, level of barbarism, I think, in humanity's history. But what is otherwise different in this war?
I think what's really different about this war is the fact that we opened our eyes to the fact that literally it doesn't matter literally what they'll do to us, we'll still be the one to blame. It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter if they kidnap, rape, mutilate, kill, record the whole thing. It doesn't matter. People are still going to be against us. And I think we kind of hoped that it's not the case because in past like operations and wars, people always like the talking point was like you're fighting like unprovoked. It's always unprovoked. Yeah, like people don't know that Israel never opens a war. We always retaliate. We never start a war. But like people don't care about history. Um, so people were like, "Why are you doing this? Why are you doing that?" They're just firing some rockets. You have the Iron Dome. You don't have to do this. You don't have to do that. So we kind of hope that okay, maybe the world just doesn't understand the situation here, but we can kind of see what they're talking about because they don't understand the situation. They think we're just attacking, seamlessly, just doing whatever we want because it's our country. And after October 7th, we realized in a terrible way that it doesn't matter what they'll do to us. It doesn't matter how many evidence, how many videos, how many horrible testimonies there'll be. Nobody cares. They just want to blame the Jews and the state of Israel. And it was a very, like, it wasn't that surprising, but for a lot of people in Israel, it was a very hard pill to swallow. But yeah, it's good that we opened our eyes now to see what the world really think of us and about the state of Israel, and that it's literally doesn't matter what they'll do to us. We're still the bad guy.
Yeah, it's not really surprising, sadly, but it's shocking still from a humanity and a moral point of view because I think October 7th really kind of brought to question for many Jews that this would set a new level and people would finally come to understand what we're dealing with,
Yeah.
the extent of it. But yeah, it was, it still is pretty shocking to see people.
The fact that people are supporting Hamas, which is a well-known, documented terrorist organization,
Hmm.
just to be on the opposite side of Jews in Israel is just, I'm sorry for the language, but that's fucking insane. It's absolutely insane that you will support anyone, literally anyone but us, even if it's a terrorist organization. So that was a very, very hard reality to accept, but we got no choice.
Mm. And even more questionable when you think about the fact that a lot of people stood by, the people of Iran not that long before. And now they're standing with an Iran funded and Iranian government funded terror organization. That's,
Uh,
yeah.
they're not. That's the thing. They're not. You have to separate. the Iranian government and the Iranian people. There's a big, big difference. That's the thing about Arab, dictatorships. That's the thing. The government wants you to think that the population thinks one way when it's actually not true, because that's what dictatorship is. Like, what I say goes, but the people on the ground, the true people of Iraq and Iran, they don't think that way. They know the cost of being under a fundamentalist radical Islam regime. They know the consequences. And I talk to people from Iran, I talk to people from Iraq in my DMs and Instagram. And they always, it's very important for them to clarify that they don't support Hamas in any way. Of course, they're sad about the innocent that are dying, both Israelis and Palestinians, and of course we're too. That's the humanitarian part of this, but they're not supporting Hamas in any way. And most of Iranian people that live outside of Iran right now are very vocal about their support towards Israel, and that tells you something.
Hmm. Maybe I misspoke. I meant people around the world stood with the Iranian people against their government.
Yes,
And now they're kind of switching sides, which
of
must feel
course.
like a betrayal to Iranians too.
It's a betrayal. Everything about this war, everything about this conflict is a betrayal. It's a betrayal of human rights. It's a betrayal of women's rights, gay rights, everything. And that's the sad thing about this conflict is that the hatred towards Jews is so strong that they're not even understanding what they're standing with and what they're saying. They're not even understanding what it means. Like, people from Iran, when they ran away from one reason or another, they will tell you, like, you don't understand what you're supporting. You're living in a Western country, you're comfortable, you have the right to vote, you have the right to walk around however you want to be involved with whatever whoever you want to, and
Mhm.
you're supporting a government, you're supporting an organization that if you're suspected of being gay, they will behead you. You support an organization and a government that if a woman walks alone without the company of men, she could be stoned to death. Like, that's what you're supporting. So talking about human rights and genocide and all those words that completely lost meaning is just, other than like pure ignorance, it's just infuriating to see how dumb and how I don't know, even they're just so poisoned. Their mind is so poisoned that they can't even think straight. Like, really, and that's very upsetting.
Mm. Do you think it has to do with people wanting to belong to a group of what they consider woke people, or do you think it really has to do with age old anti Semitism?
I think the thing is, it's both. That's why it's so strong. That's why it's so noticeable, because it's an old age hatred towards the Jews. We all know it. We all experience it throughout our history. Obviously, anti-Semitism is as old as Jews, and it's this combined with this woke generation, with this like, explain to me, how is it possible that you can offend someone, deeply offend someone, by calling him the wrong gender, and you'll be expelled and whatever from whatever institute you're studying in, and you can lose your job by
Hmm.
calling someone in the wrong pronouns. But if you're calling for genocide of Jews, that's not a problem. Please explain to me how this is even possible in 2023, 2024. How does this make sense to anyone? That if I call someone a she and he's a he or a them, I can lose my job. But if I say all Jews must die and from the river to the sea, Palestine will be free, calling for an ethnic cleansing of Jews from their homeland, that's a legitimate protest. That's what I can't understand. That's what really like buggles me.
Hmm. Yeah, it's really inexplicable. I think there's no words.
Yeah.
What is something like amongst the many misinformations and lies and made up history that we see online?
Yeah.
What is something that you'd like for people to really know that you see the most lies and misinformation on social media about?
I think people need to first of all, history. Think about history that if you don't pay attention to it, it will happen again. The world has been proven many, many times. The world is in circular motion. What happened will happen again, and so on and so forth. And when you erase the history or try to change history, which is impossible because it already happened. That's the thing about history. You can't change it. It already happened. You're ignoring all the conclusion that the world got from the things that happened. So if we're like an example, if you're talking about past relationship, right? For me as a guy, right? Every relationship I had, good one, bad ones, I came to several conclusions about me as a person and about what I want with my partner, right? Now, if I erase that or change that, I will never find a partner.
Mm.
That's the situation we're in right now. We will never find a solution if we keep erasing slash changing history. We need to understand that history have a big part of conclusions and resolutions that we come to because we went through so much shit over the years. And if we try to erase or change that, that's just insane. Like Jesus was a Palestinian, all this shit that people just like open history books. It's not about religion. I never, ever in my arguments with pro Palestinians never mentioned the Torah or the Bible or the Old Testament. You call it however you want to. Why? Because that's not the argument. That's not the argument. If you don't believe in Judaism, there's no point of me bringing up Torah. You know what I mean? But it is very vital for me to bring up the Dead Sea Scrolls, all the thousands and thousands of artifacts that have been found in Israel, connecting to the Maccabees, connecting to the old kingdom of Israel and Judea. Like it's historical facts. It's just, you know what I mean? Like, how can you ignore that?
Hmm.
It's just insane. It's like if we'll just, I'm not saying we should do that, of course, but like for an example, if tomorrow somebody will decide, okay, we're taking down the pyramids, we're taking them down, no more pyramids for some whatever reason, and 50 years from now, people will say there were never was pyramids. I'm sorry, there were
Hmm.
never pyramids in Egypt. I don't know what you're talking about. Some purple hair, whatever they them will say. I don't. There were never pyramids. Actually, the pyramids were Palestinians. Egyptian people will lose their fucking minds, and that's
Yeah.
what happened right now. Like when you talk to me, you have no idea about anything, especially not history or gender for that matter. And you talk to me, an Israeli Jew that lived here for his entire life. I got ancestors that live here. I have whole families, whole like history and generation upon generations of history and like proven history in the pages of history, not of Israelis and Jews from Egypt, from whatever kingdoms that were here at the time. And you, because you saw a TikTok video, you'd be like, yeah, but there was never Jews in that region before. My instinct is to slap you in the face, but I will not do that because I want to have a conversation and I'm trying to control my emotions. But my instinct as an Israeli, as a Jew, will be to slap you in the face. And people don't understand how hard it is for us to just hear those like stupid, insanely delusional claims. And just because a TikToker said it, so it must be true.
Hmm.
It's very hard not going insane right now. It's very, very hard.
Yeah, I completely agree and understand. Yeah. And I think I would be interested to know what your point on this is, because I think we're first and foremost a people.
Mhm.
And in addition, we have a shared religion. And I think this distinction needs to be made very clearly because we're one people, a nation, even with Jews in the diaspora everywhere, meaning outside of Israel. But once other people would understand that we're a people, a nation, not necessarily only a country, their justification, I would think, of anti Semitism and the constant murderous prosecution over many centuries kind of falls apart even faster.
Yeah, but that's very optimistic. And unfortunately, I can't really believe that something doesn't matter. You can slap someone in the face with evidence and proof, and you can do whatever you want. But the thing is, what we talked about, the combination of this woke generation
Hmm.
and the old, very old age anti Semitism, it's very hard to beat because when you argue with someone with no logic and reason, how can you win this debate?
Hmm. Yeah, very true.
To win an argument, to win a debate, you have to have some set of rules that we agree on, something that we can go from to argue, to give our arguments. But when you argue with someone who is so delusional and so blind with hate that they don't care about history, they don't care about facts, they just care about screaming genocide and ethnic cleansing, how can you win that argument? It doesn't matter.
Also something that I've seen a lot of times, and this is just one minor part of the misinformation that is being circulated like a virus on social media, really, is about settler violence. So, what
Oh,
the
wow.
the
Wow.
international community calls West Bank, we call Judea and Samaria, um,
Let me
which,
read you something. Let me read you something about settler violence. You ready?
yeah, yeah,
Are you ready for this? Okay. According to the UN, I'm translating from Hebrew, so I'm sorry if it's
yeah, sure, no,
lost in translation. But according to the UN, between the years 2016 to 2022, there were no less than 5,656 violent occasions of settler violence against Palestinians. Now, 30% of those events were in Jerusalem. After very strict scrutiny of the events, comes out that 29% of them, over 1,600 of them, was Muslim riots in Temple Mount, not settler violence. That's one,
hmm
right? 45% of the so-called settler violence, 45% of this was a terrorist attack going bad, meaning someone tried to kill the settler reacted, defended himself, and killed that guy, and the UN consider this as settler violence.
hmm
Broke into a settlement, try to murder a family, the settler will shoot them,
in
and the
defense.
UN, and it's self-defense, and the UN will say,
Hmm.
"Oh, a settler killed a Palestinian."
Hmm.
You know what I mean?
Yeah, I think we could do about 5,000 podcast episodes on the UN and its anti-Semitic bias against Israel in itself, I think.
Yeah, and the worst example I can give you about settler violence, right? In 2018, April 8th, 2018, because people love to say, "Give us the evidence, show us the evidence, show us the videos, show us the whatever." I'll give you exact dates and names so people
Mhm.
stop bullshitting, right? I'm not saying like that's my opinion. No. 2018, April 8th, 2018. Muhammad Abed El Karim Marshood, that's his name. Muhammad Abed El Karim Marshood tried to stab Israeli citizen in a gas station in Ma'ale Adumim, right? An Israeli citizen with a weapon, with a valid weapon license, everything is okay. Shoot him. The day afterwards, April 9th, the terrorist died in the hospital. The UN, listen to this, the UN recorded that incident as settler violence twice. What does that
Okay.
mean? Twice. April 8th for the shooting, April 9th for the death of the terrorist.
Yeah,
So,
it's not surprising.
yeah, so that's what I have to say about settler violence. This is insane, misguided, and just straight up lying about everything. To think that the big problem that we have here is settlers' violence? No. It's
Hmm.
settlers are self-defending their country, their settlements, their homes, their kids. And I know because I grew up there. So anybody who will tell me you should say you don't know, I lived there. I grew up there. I served there my entire fucking life. Don't you tell me about what you think and what you heard from some news media or whatever and try to turn this argument around to settler violence, which is infuriating in so many levels that I can't even understand. I'm getting riled up right now. This is just driving me crazy, right?
Hmm.
It's like me talking about I'm sorry to be blunt, but it's exactly how I feel. It's like me talking about black people violence in Atlanta, which I have no idea about.
Hmm.
But I'll be like, that's the real problem of the US. Black people attacking in the streets of Atlanta. How infuriating that is that I have no information about the situation. Everything that I know is from different media outlets, and I'm so biased because, let's say, of course I'm not, but like, let's say I'm so biased because I just hate black people, that's everything I'm talking about is black people violence. And you will
Hmm.
say, no, but listen, white people broke into their homes, try to kill them, and they defended themselves. And I'll be like, yeah, 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 whatever. Black people are the worst. You know what I mean? That sounds
Hmm.
insane, and that's very, very racist. And that's
Hmm.
exactly how we feel.
Exactly. Yeah. And I think you could hand people like, how Hamas has done with actually publishing those videos of the GoPro cameras that they had brought themselves. And I think you could hand people like information on a silver platter, but they probably wouldn't want to hear about it because it doesn't fit their narrative.
Yeah.
And I read on several, and I will have some linked as well in the show notes in case anybody actually wants to read up on some factual based stuff. That Muslim on Jew aggression in the settlements, so outside of the so called official borders of Israel, is 16 times higher than Jew on Muslim. So,
Of course,
on
and
several sides.
taking consideration that the Jew on Arab violence is mainly self-defense, and the occasion that it's not, those people are trialed and usually go to prison. So,
Exactly.
because we are a Western country surrounded by Arab dictatorships and fundamentalist radicals that are trying to exterminate us. That's not an excuse, but the people who just go around and try, I don't know, try to hurt Arabs or Palestinians are going to jail because we are a Western country. We don't behead people. We don't execute people. We don't do that because we have Western values. And a lot of people in Israel right now thinking that we should be more like the Arabs if we want to protect ourselves. But we would never do that because we have Western values and obviously Jewish values, which is
Mhm.
do not harm anyone unless it's a self defense. That's written in the Torah. That's the rules that the state of Israel were established on. You will never hurt someone unless they're actively trying to kill you. That's the only reason you will hurt someone. And to think otherwise is just not true. This is just a bunch of lies.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that's also a reason why the IDF is being called the most humane army in the world.
Yep.
And I personally would have to wholeheartedly agree. I haven't seen a sovereign nation being attacked by multiple terrorist organizations over so many years. And then the most horrendous barbaric attacks on Jews to happen on October 7th, where this country's army would then, before their incursion, initially actually warn people that had elected this only one. They've only elected them once, but they do seem to have the vast majority of Palestinians support, 75%. I don't think any other country would warn the civilians.
Absolutely. No one
Like, you
will.
don't see that.
No one will because it's stupid and it's losing the whole effect of war and warfare. It's against everything that you've been taught in army school or whatever, because you never do that. You will never inform someone, listen, I'm going to punch you in the face tomorrow at 10 o'clock sharp. You would never do that. You will never do that. That's the stupidest thing you can ever do in your entire life. But we
Mhm.
do it every day because we don't want to hurt innocent people. But the thing is, what people don't really understand that in the Arab world, which I studied for 3 years in my degree, that I have a communication degree, and I took extra classes about the Arab world and how Islam came to be, and I took a course specifically about Hamas. And what people don't understand with the Arab mentality is that human life doesn't matter. It doesn't matter at all. That's why they get all those promises from Islam about what happens in the afterlife, because the life that you have right now doesn't matter. The best thing you can do with your life right now is become a murderer or become a suicide bomber or whatever, to kill as many Jews as you can while you die. And for Western people, that sounds insane because it is. But that's what people don't understand. We hold dear everything about human life and about human dignity and rights and whatever. But in the Arab world, especially in the radical Islam, human life doesn't matter at all. And that's what you have to understand. It's very hard to digest that, but it's true,
Mhm.
and they're saying it. Like, the thing about the Arab world, to say something like, to be honest, they never lied. They flat out saying, we want to kill Jews. We will not rest until the state of Israel is erased. They're saying it. They're not being very sophisticated about it. They're not trying to like choose carefully words that are, people get confused. No, they're saying it. And still people are like, no, but Israel is the problem. That's anti Semitism for you.
And they kept saying, we will do October 7th again.
Yeah, they're
And
still
people,
saying it.
yeah.
It will happen again and again and again, and we will never stop. So you tell me what we should do. If the state of Israel didn't care about human life and about innocent people, on October 8th, this war will be over. That's it. We will blow the shit out of them. We'll tell them, listen, in 24 hours, we're going to bomb the shit out of you, and we got the Air Force to do it. You can either get out or fucking climb on the fence to Egypt, because we're gonna destroy you. And that's what every other country would have done. Any other Western country. I'm not even talking about Russia or North Korea. I'm not even talking about those lunatics. I'm talking about Western countries. Any Western country. If the United States were under attack from New Jersey, which is kind of the size of Israel, if New Jersey will be like, listen, we will never stop until the United States of America will be destroyed. What do you think the president of the United States would do? Would the president of the United States would be like, listen, listen, listen. We should give New Jersey a chance, and we should maybe try to give them like humanitarian aid and send a bunch of trucks full of food and medicine, and make sure that we lose as many American soldiers as we can, just so
Mhm.
New Jersey will continue to exist while they're saying all the time, we want to erase the United States and we will never stop. You really think that would happen? Not in a million years.
Mhm. Yeah, you saw what happened, and we could discuss whether that was correct or the way it was done was great. But we saw what happened after 9/11.
Can.
They went to attack where the terrorists were based.
Yeah.
without warning them where they were going to attack. And yeah.
Exactly. The thing is, United States, the wars that the United States have waged over the years were never on United States soil. They were
Mhm.
always Afghanistan, Iraq, Iran, wherever it may be, Vietnam, wherever.
Mhm.
The only attack was like Pearl Harbor, whatever. But like, and like, I'm sorry, but that's the truth. You don't know what it's like to fight on your borders and inside your country. And for the United States to tell us, like, you should do this and you should do that, no. Right after 9/11, the United States bombed like a bunch of weddings in Afghanistan because they thought that there may be going to be Al Qaeda terrorists there. 300, 400 people died because maybe one of them was Al Qaeda member. So for the United States to lecture us about, oh, you should use more precise weapons is just straight up hypocrisy.
I actually wanted to talk to you about that interesting difference and similarity between the US and Israel as well, concerning guns, because most people that I know in Israel own a weapon legally and everything. How do you think it is possible that we don't have public shootings in Israel like in the States? Is it because we're one people, we're more homogenous but diverse in terms of background in a way?
I don't want to be too blunt, but I hope you understand my intentions. People don't own guns in Israel because they're bored or they want to, have an arsenal to show their friends. No, the people that own weapons in Israel are either in active duty or work in a dangerous places or live in a dangerous places such as Judea and Samaria or wherever. That's why they own guns. They don't own guns because they're just bored and want to have a gun. No one in Israel ever had or ever will go into a school and shoot because that's not why we have guns. And it's so hard to have a personal weapon in Israel. It's so hard. They didn't even issue me a weapons license. They didn't. They say we're overpacked with requests and we're reviewing everything, blah, 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 bureaucracy, whatever. But it didn't give me one. Why? Because we don't just hand out guns to people in Israel, which is very, common in the United States. A 17-year-old can't get a gun in Israel. Never in a million years.
And
And
for a good reason. Yeah.
exactly. And the gun that you get when you're 18, when you join the army, it's property of the IDF. You can't use it however you want to. If you will go to jail. Absolutely. You will go to I'm not talking about shooting. I'm talking about using the gun that the IDF gave you to threaten someone. You will directly go to jail for many, many years. And that's the thing. That's the issue. In the United States, if you want to have a gun, some country it's easier, some countries it's harder, but you will have a gun. Nobody knows anything about you. Nobody knows about your history. Nobody knows if you have a mental illness. No, you just wait 10 days or whatever, it depends on the country, and you own a gun.
Hmm.
You understand how crazy that is?
It is. Yeah.
So, you know what I mean? That's the main reason we don't have school shooting in Israel because we're under constant attacks from our enemies that are just walking around inside Israel and outside of Israel that we don't have the luxury of shooting inside schools.
Thank you for making that point.
Sure.
Circling quickly back to your studies, because I just can't wrap my head around what happened on October 7th. Do you think there is an answer to whether Islamic indoctrination of Palestinians, especially in Gaza, is actually really enough to make somebody this evil and cruel?
If you've been taught from the day you were born that the only reason you're on this planet is to kill Jewish people, yes, absolutely.
But if I imagine the worst thing I could potentially imagine, a group of people that I would have the most disdain for would probably be the Nazis up until
Mhm.
October 7th.
Mhm.
Even after getting used to going through wars and terror attacks in Israel, even then, I would probably still say the Nazis were the people that I had the most disdain for.
Mhm.
I could still not imagine being indoctrinated and brainwashed that much to, you know, it's cruel, but I'll still mention it. Putting a baby into an oven.
Yeah.
I, I don't think there's a way.
Yeah, but the difference between the Nazis and the radical Muslim terrorist organization, the difference is that the Nazi movement was a national thing. Think of a national pride. Jews are ruining our country. The main problem in our country is Jews. The reason that Germany is not as great as it should be is because of Jewish people. So what are we going to do? We're going to concentrate them in a camp, work them to death, and then kill them. After World War One, when Germany was almost destroyed, and how all those restrictions of like their army couldn't be over 100,000 soldiers, and about weaponry and production and everything, Hitler came and said, "Listen, all of this shit that's happening, like the main reason that Germany is uh, so humiliated is Jews." And that's what pursued, like, main talking points. That was the thing that made the German people think, we have to blame someone. And again, combine this humiliation with anti-Semitism, you get the Holocaust. But what the Nazis never did, they weren't religious. They were very atheist. Hitler was laughing in the face of the Catholic Church. That was very atheist. That was very, like, quote unquote, logical. That's why it was so effective, because it was nothing to do with religion. The Hamas and Islamic Jihad and the Muslim Brotherhood and all Hezbollah, all those things. It's like a religion war. Jihad, the word jihad is a religious war.
Hmm.
It's a holy war. And when you combine religious radicals with anti Semitism, and you add to the mix the fact that they truly believe that this place is theirs, you are bound to do some horrific stuff. Horrific stuff. It's not just one thing, it's the combination of all of this make you do some horrible, horrible shit. And that's what they did. That's what they did in 1886 in Petah Tikva. That's what they did in 1929 in Hebron. And that's what they did in October 7th here in Israel.
Hmm.
That's the only explanation.
There's something that can be maybe taken from like cult brainwashing, but I don't think like probably depends on the person and one's innate potential for evil. But I don't think you could get me to a point where even against Hamas now in retaliation, I don't think you could get me to a point to do anything like that ever.
Because you were born in a place and a time that you will never be able to comprehend those atrocities. But we have a bunch of people that were Muslims, even from terrorist organizations, and converted to Judaism. And if you listen to them and the things they're saying, you will say, as a Western cultured woman yourself, you will say, no way, no way. That can't be true. But it is. If you were a 3-year old and the first present your dad give you is an AK-47, when you're 29, you will put a baby in the oven. And the thing that the people outside of Israel can't understand that is because you don't feel the hate, the blazing, insane hate that we feel every day. That's why it's so hard to understand.
Mm.
People in Israel, some of them were shocked by the October 7th massacre. You know who weren't shocked? Settlers, because settlers know what those animals are capable of. When they experience a Palestinian terrorist went inside a house and stab a baby to death in their crib, nothing is off limits.
And
And
there's been many families like that, yeah.
many families like that.
Mhm.
And when it's settlers, it's all good. Oh, it's their fault. Why are they living there? But when it happens to people in the kibbutz, everybody is shocked. But I
Mhm.
grew up in Judea and Samaria. The people I serve with, my family that lives there, they said it's horrible, it's disgusting, but we're not at all surprised. And that's the thing.
Now, speaking of your everyday life a bit and maybe, trying to lift the mood a little,
Yeah.
how do you separate your private life as a citizen while you're serving the army to when you're off duty? Do you have something that you do to distress? How are you looking after your mental health?
It's a good question. I'm trying to every once in a while disconnect myself from the news, which is very good for my mental health. I recommend everyone in Israel and during my shows to every once in a while disconnect from the news, listen to some music, have some laughs, watch Netflix, whatever, do whatever makes read a book, whatever will take your mind off this horrible situation. It's not a recommendation, it's mandatory for you not to be completely lost in grief and sorrow. You have to. You have to. And for a stand up comedian, it's absolutely necessary. For me to make jokes about the situation, it's absolutely necessary to disconnect and live my life and try to, it's hard. It's so hard, but you have to do it or you will go insane.
Mm. Do you think personally, based on your experience where you grew up and everything that you learned in your studies, do you think it's a valid option to have the Palestinian Authority take over control of Gaza?
Absolutely fucking not.
Okay, thank you.
They're worse than Hamas. The only difference is they try to pretend that they're like a legitimate authority. They're a terrorist organization. The Palestinian Authority is a terrorist organization. They pay monthly salary to terrorists sitting in jail for killing Jews. If that's not a terrorist organization, I don't know what is. So the fact that they call themselves the Palestinian Authority, I'm sorry, but that means shit.
Yeah,
They're
it's just marketing.
it's just marketing. That's all
Mhm.
it is.
Is there any Arab country that you could think of that could have a mandate or some sort without another jihadi terrorist organization like Hamas, PIJ, Fatah, or Hezbollah emerging there again after the war is over?
Uh, Maybe Qatar, maybe Saudi Arabia. I don't know. But like, it's a very complicated question. But
Hmm.
I think the kind of Western Arab countries, if you can call it that, like Saudi Arabia or Qatar, maybe they're still, hiding terrorists among them, right? The heads of Hamas are hiding in Qatar, and we all know that.
I was just gonna say that makes it like a questionable option. Like,
Exactly. It's the last questionable one.
mm,
You know what I mean? It's the least questionable one because at least they're pretending. You know what I mean? At least they're pretending to try to find a solution. The 90% of them are like, yeah, kill all Jews. At least Qatar and Saudi Arabia are pretending to like, let's find a solution to this conflict. So that's at least that.
mm. If or when, and I hope this will be the case, we can get rid of Hamas, how do you think we can deal with their ideology of hate that they have taught their very, very small children for so long? Do you think there's a way that this ideology can change, even if the terrorist organization itself is gone?
It starts with education. What El Turk did in Turkey, what he tried to do, at least until they got it back, the Muslim radicals got it back. What he tried to do was get rid of all this Muslim radical like features in his country, because he knew that that's not going to go anywhere good. So he tried, and Turkey was a Western country for many years. But what he tried to do, and I think which is a very good example, is try to change the whole education system, teach Latin instead of Quran, and teach Western values to Arabs. And that's the only viable solution that you can hope for. I don't know if it's going to work, but you can hope for if you want to have peace in this region. You need Arab children to study Western values, to study math and geometry and geography instead of how to use AK-47. That's what we're hoping for, and hopefully it will happen. It will take a miracle, nothing short than a miracle, but I really hope in my heart that it will happen someday.
As always, we will have all of Matan's information and channels linked in the show notes. Thank you so much for doing this, Matan, for using your platform, for your service for our country, and also for coming on here today.
Thank you for having me.
Thanks for listening to this episode of the Upfront Podcast. If you haven't already, give us a follow and join in the conversation on Instagram and Facebook at The Upfront Podcast. Take care and see you next time.